Hi, everyone. Welcome to the information session for the Dayton Region Arts Renewal Grant Program for organizations. I'm just going to give it a few moments while people are still joining before we go ahead and get started. So thanks for being with us this afternoon. Okay. It looks like we're pretty steadily at 18 folks. So I'm going to go ahead and get started because I do want to be mindful of your time. Hi, again, welcome to the information session for the Dayton Region Arts Renewal Grant. This is for organizations. If you are an individual that has somehow popped in here today, we do have an information session scheduled for Thursday at noon, and the eligibility is just ever so slightly different. So I would encourage you, if you're an individual here, to join us on Thursday, and know that if you're unavailable for some reason on Thursday, these are going to be recorded so that you're able to watch them at a later date if you can't be present. But just wanted to go ahead and put that out there. I am Hannah Gregory. I am the grant making associate here at CultureWorks, and I'm going to go ahead and introduce my other coworkers that are here with me today. Karen Maynard, she's the director of grant making.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. We're excited to share this new funding opportunity with you. We know that the past couple of years have been extremely difficult for arts organizations and individuals working in the arts. And before we get started, I just want to say on behalf of CultureWorks that we have been so proud as the Dayton Region's Arts Agency to see all of the creative ways that you have continued to create and produce and keep inspiring our community members. So thank you all so much for your hard work. That makes us, again, very excited to have the opportunity to administer a new grant program, which is designed to alleviate some of the strain of the past 2 years and assist you in moving forward into what we hope will be a period of reinvigoration, reactivation, and renewal for our local arts community. So Hannah's going to give you all the details on that, but I would just like to add my thanks as well to the National Endowment for the Arts for making this program possible through their American Rescue Plan Subgranting program. We're so appreciative to have such amazing advocates for the arts at the national level. So Hannah, I give it back to you.
Thanks so much. And is Lisa on the call? Do you know? She's not present.
I don't. I think she got pulled into something else, unfortunately.
Okay, well, we'll go ahead and move right along then. There we go. Again, this grant opportunity is made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, which grants to nonprofits, organizations, creative writers, translators, state arts agencies, and regional arts organizations in support of art projects across the country. So we were awarded this grant along with many other arts organizations across the United States, and built out this grant program, which is allowing us to subaward to you nonprofit organizations as well as individual artists. If you would like to know more about the amazing work that the National Endowment for the Arts does, you can visit www.arts.gov. And if you are unfamiliar with us here at CultureWorks, we are the arts funding, advocacy, and service organization for the 8-county Dayton region. And we're so excited that you have decided to join us today. I'm going to just jump right in and tell you a little bit about the program. As the Dayton Region Arts Renewal Grant Program is intended to support jobs in the arts sector, keep the doors open to arts organizations in our community, and assist the field in its response to and recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic. So this is not really about starting new programs. It's more general operating support to get you bouncing back from these tumultuous past 2 years moving forward. And again, this funding opportunity is made possible by a one-time grant from the National Endowment for the Arts to us here at CultureWorks as part of the American Rescue Plan Subgranting program. So we're splitting our grant awards into 2 main categories: organizations, which is you here today, and individual artists. So we've allotted $350,000 available to award in grants funding to organizations, and organizations can request up to $15,000 in general operating support. I'm going to cover a few points of eligibility. This is not an all-inclusive list. I will point you several times throughout this presentation to cultureworks.org/apply for funding, where we're working diligently to get all of these eligibility requirements, as well as timeline and more specific things like that. But just to give you an idea of kind of what you're going to be diving into and what the eligibility requirements are. These are some of the main ones that we would like to point out. So you must be a 501c3 in the Dayton region, and you must be incorporated in the state of Ohio. That means you must be federally tax exempt, and the Dayton region means a 30-mile radius from our CultureWorks office, which is on 31 Main Street. You must also have a current charitable registration with the Ohio Attorney General's office, and we will be linking you to ways that you can double check that and make sure that you're in compliance. Again, all that can be found on our website, which we are working diligently to make sure is up and ready for you soon before the grant application opens. You must have, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, just one quick note. I should have said we are using a Q&A feature here. So as we go along, if you have questions that you want to ask, please feel free to use that little, it looks like 2 little cartoon quote bubbles at the bottom of your screen. And sorry, I cut in Hannah, but I did so because someone asked a question and I accidentally marked it as answered without answering it. So I'm going to do that now. An attendee asked, just confirming that municipal organizations are not eligible as we fall under a different tax status. And unfortunately, that is correct. This subgranting program is not going to be open to municipalities and government agencies in the Dayton region. It will strictly be for 501c3 nonprofits with arts and cultural focused missions, as Hannah said. So thank you for asking that question. I won't interrupt anymore, but just wanted to throw that one out there. Thanks.
No, thank you at all. That was my snafu for not mentioning. We'll be doing Q&As at the end, so pop your questions in there and know that we'll get to them at the end. So delving back into eligibility, you must have a minimum 3-year operating history. Again, this is to support organizations who have been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And if you're new and starting out, we applaud you, but we kind of want to see how this programming that was already in process before the pandemic is able to bounce back and how we're able to support that. A unique feature to this grant specifically is that you must have a UEI number. Oh, Lisa, hello. You must have a UEI number through sam.gov, and that stands for Unique Entity Identifier. This, again, can be obtained through sam.gov. You do not need to obtain an active registration, and this will all make sense when you're going through and trying to register. It will kind of prompt you to get your whole organization actively registered. You don't need to do that. You just need to make sure that you get that UEI number. And we do recommend that you start that process sooner rather than later because it can take 7 to 10 days to complete. So don't hang out until the end of the application to get that solidified. And finally, the main component of eligibility, we do ask that you have an arts and culture focused mission. And since I'm at the end of this slide, I just wanted to introduce our president and CEO, Lisa Hanson, and see if you had anything that you wanted to say about this new amazing grant opportunity.
Oh, well, thank you, Hannah. I am first apologize that I am late to the party here. Something pulled me away. So welcome to everybody that joined this informational session today. We are super excited to administer this grant and to make these funds available to the arts and cultural organizations and artists in our region. I am sure that you received all of the pertinent information from Karen and Hannah. They are so capable, and our thanks go to them for having everything ready for you all to be able to access these funds. You know, I think it's really important that now more than ever before, our artists and arts organizations are thriving and coming up with new and creative ways to engage the community. We have seen, you know, we've just seen a hunger for arts engagement. And I know for many of us, there have been a lot of challenges just in terms of bringing staff back and keeping that programming moving forward. We are so proud, though, of this region and all of you that have just been creating and putting great performances, shows, exhibits out there for our community to enjoy. So think about how you can use these funds, and just let that be sort of an undergirding for new creativity and new things to spring forth. That's what I think we're all looking for, to pull people in and help them even heal. You know, we've heard so much about arts and wellness and healing through the arts. So hopefully you all are thinking about all of that. I would just say that we are here to answer your questions. Hannah and Karen are always very quick to respond and make sure that you have all the information that you need, but feel free to reach out to any staff member, you know, if you have a relationship, and we'll try to get you that information because the application period is upon us and we want to get this money out into the community. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. All right, first I'm going to talk about what you cannot spend this money on. Again, this is not an all-inclusive list, but because some grants, you know, typically will cover some things, we do just want to put it out in the open, what these funds are going to be able to be used for. So artist relief, rent or food assistance to individuals not eligible, commercial enterprises or activities. Again, this is for nonprofits, not anything that is going to make a profit. Construction, purchase, or renovation of facilities. You'll notice later in this presentation that rental parts of facilities is covered, but this grant is not to purchase anything new. Kind of helping to assist, again, the things that you already have, buildings that you already have, and programming that you already have, not anything new. Travel costs or vehicle purchases. I did want to point out this one specifically because I know a lot of grants do cover travel costs, but this one does not. Honorifics, fellowships, or one-time monetary recognition awards. So we are subgranting these funds to you. So please do not subgrant these funds to anyone else. And then social activities like receptions, parties, or galas, or again, subawards to replace lost revenue. All of these are going to be ineligible activities. Now we're going to talk about what you can spend the money on, much more fun. These grant funds are going to be for general operating support that fall between October 1st, 2022 this year to next fall, September 30th, 2023. So it's a one-year grant. And these funds fall into a few different categories: salary support for your employees, fees or stipends for artists or contractors that you naturally bring in to pay for programming that you present to audiences, facilities costs such as rent and utilities, And then this one is also a new one, costs associated with health and safety supplies for staff, visitor and or visitors and audiences. So again, this goes back to helping folks get back on their feet amidst after wherever we are in the COVID-19 pandemic. So these costs will include masks, hand sanitizer, cleaning supplies, things like that. Anything to help you safely get audience members and visitors back in your space and able to engage in person. And then finally, marketing and promotion costs. And I will cover, Karen and I will cover this later when we're talking about how you'll break down the budget in the application. So looking at the timeline of this application process, it is swiftly coming upon us. We're going to open applications next Friday, July 1st. There will be about a 4-week open application window, and those applications will close promptly at 4 p.m. on Friday, August 5th. From then we'll have a few different panels go through the applications and score them based on a rubric that I'll present to you shortly. And then in September, there will be a public grant panel meeting, and that will be virtual. So that will be through Zoom. So we will meet here again in just a few months. And then, as I stated earlier, October 1st is when the grant cycle will begin. September 30th of next year will be when the grant cycle ends. From the time that your grant cycle ends, you'll have 2 months to complete a final report, and some things that you'll want to make sure that you're notating if you're awarded a grant is the number and demographic of people that you are engaging through in-person activities and through virtual activities. So just wanted to make a note of that. We are going to be required to report that back to the NEA, so we want to make sure that you're keeping track of that. The application is comprised of a couple different sections. We tried to make it as lean as possible for you because I know grant applications are abundant and we want to be mindful of your time, and we want to make sure that this is easy for you because we want to get you the funding and we don't want to make this a mountain for you to climb. So it will be comprised of some general information, your contact information, your organization's information, your address, things like that. And then it will move on to the funding request, whether you want that full 15,000 or if you want a smaller amount, maybe you don't need that much, and how you'll use those funds. We'll also ask for your mission statement and for some work samples, which I'll delve into a little bit later in the presentation. We'll also ask about your organizational programming. This is going to ask about what you've been doing for the past 3 years and also what you're looking forward to in the coming year. And we'll also be asking about your key personnel and how they're involved with the organization and their qualifications. We'll also be asking about public impact and engagement. Who do you hope to engage? Where do you hope to engage these folks? We'll also be asking, again, this all goes back to COVID relief. How has your organization been impacted by COVID-19? Whether that's, you had to cancel all your programming or you had to move your programming to a digital format. And then we'll also be asking if you've received funding from other sources of ARP or PPP loans or things like that. We'll walk you through that soon. And then finally, going back to funding request and usage, we will have a budget template that we'll have you fill out, and just making sure that those two things reflect each other and that they both align. So the application will be broken down into 3 scoring areas: artistic merits and artistic excellence, which we define as an organization's ability to create high quality artistic cultural programming. These will be scored specifically in the application through questions about the last 3 years of your programming and your future programming for the next year, the next season. This will also be scored by viewing some work samples that we may ask you to provide via video link, audio link, PDFs of written work, things like that. Of the qualifications of your artistic personnel. And then we are also adding an optional letter of support, especially maybe for some of those newer organizations who are still getting on their feet and maybe don't have a wide breadth of programming that they are able to show us, but they have the support of some other community members. The second scoring area will be potential impact. So that both refers to the impact of funding on the organization as well as the community it serves. And those will be covered in the application through us asking about how you will use these funds, particularly the artists and staff that will be compensated or hired during your grant period. Your annual audience, the demographic of those audience, where they're located, etc. As well as seeing if your mission focuses on serving underserved populations. And that includes those whose opportunities to experience the arts are limited by geography, ethnicity, economics, or disability. And this scoring area is really the biggest one. So there are quite a few questions that we'll be looking to score this. So we're also asking whether the majority of your programming takes place within a neighborhood of low or very low opportunity. And that we'll check that as it's indicated by the Ohio USR Opportunity Index. We'll also be, again, asking whether you've received funding from the CARES Act funding, PPP, shuttered venue operators grants, or other American Rescue Plan funding, and how that ties into how COVID has affected your programming. And the final scoring area is going to be administrative capacity, or the ability to manage your funds effectively. This is probably the lightest lift in the application, and we'll be scoring this through the budget that will have you input those funding categories into, and then just the quality of the application narrative and the supporting documentation that you provide in it as well. And that is a lot of information. So if you are a visual learner, fear not. We'll be walking you through the application, and I'll be showing you the budget template in just a few moments. So do not fear. That was a lot of information, and it's pretty all-inclusive. So it's basically the entire application right there. Just for transparency, we want to let you know that we do have a few funding priorities in mind, and those include eligible organizations that have not received other COVID relief funding, and organizations whose mission and or majority of programming focuses on underserved populations.
And just to add a little clarification to that last point, the way that will work for anyone who's curious is that those items will be somewhat weighted in the scoring itself. So if you're an organization who has not received other COVID-related funding, then you'll get additional points in that potential impact area. And similarly, if you're an organization who can demonstrate that you have a mission or a programming focus on underserved populations, again, there will be some weight added to your potential impact score. That being said, if you have received other COVID relief funding, by all means, still apply. This is really just to ensure that we are reaching organizations, particularly small to mid-sized organizations that might have missed out on some of those early relief funding opportunities because they have smaller staffs and they weren't able to take advantage of them as quickly as some of the larger organizations were.
Thanks, Karen. Yeah, totally. And delving into a few of the attachment things that we're going to be asking for in the application. We will be asking you for a few work samples. This is an opportunity, again, to showcase your programming in action. And we will ask for things, either images, video, or audio that is less than 6 minutes, and manuscripts that are less than 10 pages single spaced or less than or equal to 20 pages double spaced. The files that we'll be able to accept include Word docs, PDFs, Excel files, and JPEG images. So just kind of going through those 3 items. Images obviously will be JPEGs. For video or audio, you can include it as a hyperlink in a Word doc or a PDF. We will ask that you please make sure that our panelists will not need to create an account or have a password to access those files, and also that you keep it up for the duration of not only the grant application process, but the panel process as well. In the past, we have had folks go back and try to access those videos, and all of a sudden they've been taken down. So just leave them up for a little while, no rush. And then manuscripts as well, Word docs or PDFs are great. Here we go, the budget. So in the application, you'll see a link that you'll be able to download, and it will pop up an Excel file. This is the first page of the Excel file. I'll have you look down at the bottom here where it says budget overview and expense breakout in those 2 tabs. You will want to make sure that you are in the second tab when you are filling out the application. This is the first tab that you're seeing here and just kind of overviews what you're going to be filling in. And I think that I put the second, yes, I did. The second tab here, this is the one that you'll be filling out. If you try to fill out the other one, you won't be able to do it because it's locked. This second tab here is going to be editable and covers salary, support, fees, and stipends in those categories that I had mentioned earlier that are the allowable costs. Okay, now I'm gonna toss it over to Karen, who's gonna walk you through what it looks like when you are delving into the application on our platform Community Force.
Sorry about that, wasn't clear. All right, so I'm going to share my screen now and steal all the power from Hannah for just a second. So first up, any information about this program is going to be posted on the CultureWorks website. We're going to be adding information pretty quickly and furiously over the next week or so. So keep an eye here. It will be posted, as Hannah mentioned, on the Apply for Funding page. And if you haven't been to that page in a while, you'll notice that there's a new section at the very top regarding this grant program. So later or within the next week, you're going to see some more information appear here, including the full program guidelines. And on July 1st, when the application opens, right here where this gray empty space is right now, you will see a bright orange Apply Now button. So clicking that button will eventually take you to the grant platform that we're going to be using. It's an external site. It's called Community Force, and it's going to look like this. So you can see those 2 grant categories, the first one for individual artists and the one that we're talking about today for organizations. And you can also see that we aren't beginning to accept applications until July 1st. So right now there's nothing here. But similarly to our website, when the application does go live, you're going to see a big Apply Now button here beside each of these grant programs. And that's how you'll get in. But I'm going to still show you what the application looks like so you get a little sneak peek. If I go up here to my login, the first time that you apply, or when you start your application, it's going to take you to this page where you can either log in if you've ever applied for a grant program on this particular platform before. This used to house the Artist Opportunity Grant and the Special Projects Grant that we administer with funding from the Montgomery County Arts and Cultural District. So you might already have a username and password, so you can still use the same one to get into the site. If it's your first time using this platform, then you're just going to go to this Create a New Account. And it's going to give you this very simple, straightforward form to fill out to register your username. One thing to keep in mind, since you'll be applying on behalf of an organization, you are going to register as an individual user, but we recommend that you use an email address that is something that other members of your organization have access to. Just in case there's ever any staff turnover, it's always good for people to be able to access things as things change. So we'll skip that for now. Once you do have your user account set up, when you log in, you will see a list of any applications that you've created in the past. The first time you log in, none of this will be here. It'll just take you directly to your application dashboard. And that's going to look like this. So right now the application exists in two sections. There's a general information section where you're providing, as the name suggests, some general information about your organization, such as your name, some of your primary contact information, and all of that good stuff. Someone in the chat asked a really good question earlier about asking for the federal employer identification number versus the unique entity identifier number. We are going to ask you for both. The EIN is something that makes it easy for CultureWorks to do things like double check through the IRS database that you're a tax exempt 501c3. But as Hannah mentioned earlier, this unique entity identifier number that you're going to get through sam.gov is something new that we are required to ask you for by the federal government. So if you've ever applied for any funding, any federal funding prior to this past spring, you probably had to provide what was called a DUNS number. But earlier this spring, they made a transition, so they're using this new UEI number. So we'll ask you for both, and there will be a link in here so that you can go straight to the sam.gov website and get your number if you don't have it already. All right. Someone also asked about restrictions on the size of the organizations who are applying. And we have another operating support grant program that has pretty strict rules about what size you have to be in order to qualify, but that is not the case for this program. Since the funding amounts are capped at $15,000, we're trying to be pretty open with who within those 501c3 arts and cultural organizations can apply. So you're just going to tell us generally what size organization you are. And there's no reward or penalty for being a smaller organization or a larger organization. Where the scoring will come into play has more to do with things like what Hannah mentioned earlier. If you've already received COVID funding, then there are certain points that you won't get in the scoring rubric, because again, we want to prioritize organizations who have not had those opportunities. All right. Once you fill out a section of the application, you just hit save and return to dashboard to go back home. And this is where the meat of the application is going to be, in this application narrative section. So Hannah's done an awesome job getting all of this loaded up. But basically what you'll see is we're going to ask you for just a general overview of your funding request. We give you a little reminder about what you can use these dollars for. And as Hannah mentioned, this is a general operating support grant. So you want to use it for your day-to-day ongoing activities rather than new programming. And we'll ask you for a little bit of narrative here. Sometimes it's helpful for the grant panelists to have your words to explain your budget template or your budget spreadsheet when they review your application. So we'll ask you for just a little bit of a narrative about that. Now, the NEA is really emphasizing with this program a desire to return artists and creative workers back to work. So something that we are required to track and something that you will be asked to track if you are awarded funding is the number of staff and artists who have been compensated using these grant funds. So we're going to ask you for an estimate up front. You'll also see this in that budget spreadsheet that you submit. Well, you'll provide some more information about the staff positions that will be compensated and the general salaries that you're going to be paying. Then you'll get into the sections that we talked about earlier in the scoring areas. So artistic excellence and artistic merit is where Hannah was talking about providing information about what type of programming your organization tends to create, providing some work samples to support your narrative and all of that exciting stuff. And then we'll get down into the potential impact, which this represents about half of the total points in the scoring rubric. So this is a really key area of the application. You're going to want to take some time to really make sure that you've got a strong narrative here. So again, the program is really emphasizing supporting organizations who are reaching into underserved communities. So if that describes you, be really specific about what that means. Talk about, or provide specific data points about community members that you serve who tend to not have access to the arts. And then we'll also ask you for that opportunity information that Hannah mentioned. So if you are an organization who provides a lot of programming in a neighborhood that tends to not have a lot of access to arts and other resources, you can use this handy interactive map that's linked here to put in your typical programming venues and see if they're identified as low or very low areas of opportunity. And if they are, then you'll just provide the addresses here. And that's going to feed again into that potential impact score. So the rest of this you're going to pretty much get to read at your leisure, but just to show you a couple of technical things. Again, once you've completed all of the various questions, you'll just hit that save and return to dashboard. It's going to load it all up. And you have not yet submitted. Both of these sections should read at 100%. There's also going to be one more section when the application launches called the Memorandum of Understanding, where we're going to have you certify a lot of language that is required by the federal government. So once all of these are at 100%, you'll go up here to the top and you'll do final review and submit. When you click that, it'll give you a little pop-up message that says that it wants you to click a checkbox, just acknowledging that you have reviewed your application and you're happy with it. So you'll hit continue with review. And it's going to show you a preview of your application. So this is exactly what it's going to look like for reviewers when they get into the system. So you'll just go through all of that. Any documents you've uploaded will be linked so you can double check and make sure you've got the right thing there. And if you do, there's a checkbox up here and there's also one at the very bottom of the screen. So you'll just click it and then you'll hit submit. But I'm not going to do that because there's one more thing I want to show you. If you have multiple people on your team who you want to have a hand in preparing this application, you do have the option of adding collaborators. So to do that, under this choose action button here, you just hit the drop down and then you're going to see an add collaborator button. So this is if you have portions of the application that you really want your finance person to look at, you really want your program director to take a look at before you submit everything, you can make sure that they have access. So the way that you're going to add collaborators is you'll just use this add a collaborator button. And they have to have their own user account in order for you to find them. So make sure they go through that step of creating a user account and signing up. But once they do have an account, you can find them by their last name, first name, or email address. So I'm going to pick on Hannah and make her help me with my application. And then once you find them, you'll just hit this add button. Woohoo. She's stuck. She has to help me now. Excellent. And then there's one more step. So now you have your collaborators added, but you need to assign the sections of the application that you want them to help with. So you're going to hit this assign section button. And this is very general. So it's going to ask you, do you want them to just fill out the kind of contact information portion of the application, or do you want them to have access to that big application narrative section? And then you'll just pick your collaborator from that list and save. and they will get an email invitation letting them know that they've been added as a collaborator to the application. One thing about collaborators is since they're treated as kind of secondary users on the application system, the collaborators cannot submit the application. So whoever set up the application, whoever the primary grant writer or contact person is, you're going to have to be the one who will do the whole final review and submit. But it's still handy. That way you can, you know, many hands make light work. So, and I think that was everything I was going to show you on the grant website. So I will stop sharing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. I am not very technologically advanced, so Karen gratefully agreed to do that portion of the information section. All right. And I'm going to share this last part of the presentation I have, which is just how you can contact us. Bring this slideshow. There we go. Again, to access all of this information, I would encourage you to visit cultureworks.org, apply for funding. I don't think all this information is up quite yet, but it will be soon, and it definitely will be up by the time applications go live next Friday. If you have any questions at all, feel free to contact Karen or I. Our emails are right there in the slideshow. And again, yes, we will be sending this recorded session out to all, and we'll have it up on our website as well, so you can access it anytime. And I think with that, we can dive right into the Q&A.
Mm-hmm. So if anybody has a meeting, or if you're just really excited for lunch and you need to hop off, we completely understand. But as Hannah said, please feel free to contact us anytime with your follow-up questions. But we will hang on for a while so you can have some time to think about your burning questions, and feel free to drop them into that general chat box, or if you'd like to put them in the Q&A, we'll check both of those and we'll just be here.